Good evening, everyone, and welcome back to yet another session of Clique Virtual Wine Tasting Series. Over the last months, we have met with several winemakers, taste through a vast array of wines from Bordeaux to Burgundy to Portugal. Today, we are very, very happy to have yet to showcase another of our agency wines, Bodegas Artadi. And I think over the last weeks and the last few sessions, we at Clique has been cracking our brains, thinking of the content on how to bring you interesting and yet educational information about wines, about winemaking. And what we did was we brought to you live streaming of harvesting, crushing, pressing, and fermentation. So we're in the month of November now, and I'd like to hand over the stage to Patricia so she can tell us a little bit what is happening at the vineyard in the month of November. Patricia, she is the third generation of Artadi family. So she will bring to us traditional methods, what her father taught her, and what she's going to bring to the winery with her own ideas and her own experience. So without further ado, Patricia, let me hand the Zoom session over to you.
Thank you, Alice, and thank you, everyone, and especially Wine for inviting us today to do such a wonderful virtual tasting of our toddy. So today, a little bit the idea is, like Alice mentioned, is to show you what's happening right now at the vineyard. So it's the pruning season. It's still a bit soon to do it, but we thought it would be very interesting for you to actually see this part, which is normally hidden, and it's normally not so pretty because of colors, like Alice mentioned, that it's not so nice at this time. But we thought it's a very important moment for us, so we wanted to share it with you. And then we'll head back to the winery and we'll do a tasting. So today with us we have Ruben, who is the head of our vineyards and the fields. He'll be explaining himself and I'll be translating. And we also have my brother, who's currently also with us here, to join us also and give us his perspective. So today we've come to all change cameras for you to see where we are. So today we've chosen Quintanilla, which is one of our single plots and one of the wines that we'll be tasting today later on. And Quintanilla, it's quite a special vineyard. As you can see, it has a wonderful stone door because this, where the vineyard is right now, used to be a village called Quintanilla, and therefore where the name comes from. And the thing is that probably in the 15th century, with the Black Pest, the village became deserted because everyone moved on to the village, the biggest village next to Quintanilla, which is El Villar, which is also where the vineyard is located, or they moved to La Guardia, which is the other village nearby. And so the village became inhabited, and as it was what was being grown around the area, as we're in a completely wine growing region where probably around 95% of people are involved in the winemaking business, there's a vineyard that was planted here. So as there was a village, we don't have a very depth soil. So as we can see, and I'll move forward, we can see that the vineyards are not very, very robust and big for the age that these vineyards have. But it creates a very unique and elegant because and strength in the wine, because the vineyards actually have to suffer to get all the nutrients. So it becomes very, 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 the wines are very, very powerful. And so this is a little bit the background that I'll start giving you afterwards in the tasting. We'll talk about more about Quintanilla, and now I'm just going to head over to Ruben, who will explain a little bit more about the pruning.
So the first vintage of Quintanilla is 2016, right?
It's the first vintage that we've had it as a single plot, but we've had it with us for a longer time. But we used to put it in Viñas de Gain. So the first single plot of Quintanilla is 2016, but we've had the vineyard for a much longer time with us. Since my brother's saying since the 90s. So let me quickly present to you. So this is Carlos, who is my brother.
Hi.
And this is Ruben. Ruben Liquete, who's also been working for us for a very long time, and he's head of field management.
Hola.
Hi, Ruben. We are here to learn from you.
Que están aquí para aprender de ti.
Muy bien. Okay. We're going to do the translation to Ruben also.
Thank you.
¿Empezamos en esta?
Why don't we? Vamos más para allá. Vamos a empezar más. Let's
Okay,
start. At the beginning.
so let's start at the beginning of the line. Sorry for all the moving. So we're going to start in this vine. I'll zoom in, and Ruben.
Empezamos entonces, ¿no?
Sí, Carlos, un poquito para atrás.
Bueno, yo les doy la bienvenida aquí a la sección vitícola de
Hi.
Bodegas Artadi.
Ruben is saying hello to everyone from the viticulture part of the winery.
Bien, y vamos a realizar la operación de poda, que es la primera intervención que se hace en el cultivo.
So today, like we said earlier, we're going to do the pruning, which is the first work that we do on the cycle of a vineyard.
Ahora estamos en un momento de reposo de la planta, el inicio del reposo de la parada vegetativa.
Right now, we're at the beginning of the resting period of a vineyard.
Quizás no es el momento idóneo porque estábamos en el inicio, como digo. Es mejor esperar a que esté entrado el invierno, pleno invierno.
We might be a bit too early at the moment because normally the ideal time to start pruning would be once the winter has really taken off, so more in the months of January, end of December, January.
Sí, y aprovechando días que sean con temperaturas un poco más elevadas, menos humedad y que el estado de la luna esté en menguante.
The ideal time would be when it's a bit more of a sunny day and we have less humidity, and with the moon being on
the decreasing.
On the decreasing.
The reason I'm going to explain it a little bit why. The reason why he was saying like a less humid time is because humidity brings fungus and disease that it can occur on the vines. So if we have a drier day, the fungus will be more difficult to spread out on the vines.
Los fundamentos de la poda básicamente son tres objetivos. El primero es controlar la producción de la cosecha venidera.
So the one of the three reasons why three fundamentals on the pruning. The first is to control the production or the yields of the vine.
Porque en cada yema, la parte del sarmiento, en cada yema ya están predispuestas las uvas, la producción de la cosecha siguiente.
Because on each bud, we can already see the production of the following year.
Y de igual forma, según subimos en longitud hacia arriba del sarmiento, la fertilidad de las yemas es mayor.
So, and as long as we start to move upwards on the shoot, the fertility increases.
The fertility of the buds increases.
Por ello, reduciendo el número de yemas y de trozos o de pulgares o de trocillos que dejamos del año anterior, controlamos la producción.
So by reducing the length of the shoot or the wood that we're leaving, we're controlling the productivity.
Por ello, en este sarmiento en lugar de cortar por arriba, cortamos dejando 2 yemas, 1, 2, reduciríamos la producción.
So for this Riesling, when we start pruning, we always leave 2 buds, so one here and the other one here, and that's where we cut, instead of cutting higher up. So we cut here and that, leaving always 2 visible buds.
Okay.
Sí, sí. Por eso, en la cepa, para encontrar un equilibrio de producción y vegetación, dejaríamos 4 pulgares, que se denomina este trozo de sarmiento, con 2 yemas, 8.
For that reason, we would leave 4 cuttings in a vine.
That will allow us, that will allow us to get a good balance on the production. You need to think that from each cutting, and we have 2 buds. From this bud, we have 2 shoots, and then in each of the shoots, we normally have an average of 1.5 grapes. I know that you cannot have a half a grape on the vines, but some of the shootings only produce 1 grape.
Is everything? If you have any questions, Alice, or if you something is not clear, just feel free to cut it and can maybe explain something better or more precisely.
Yes, will do. And then to the participants as well, if you want to ask any questions, you can put it into the chat, and then we'll intercept the sessions accordingly.
Okay.
Perfect. So we
Okay.
continue.
Vale. El segundo fundamento de la poda sería crear un sistema de conducción, un sistema de formación fijo de la cepa.
The second reason to the pruning, or the second function of the pruning, would be to form the vine in order for its conductivity. Can I say?
Yeah, for being able to trail it and to have a pruning system, to create a. You know that there are different type of prunings. We have the gobelet, we have the cordon, we have the, I don't know, like cordon gougot. So our pruning system is kind of defined as a gobelet, and one of the fundamentals is to create a gobelet system and to create that the type of pruning.
Okay.
Vale, entonces, el sistema que nosotros utilizamos o que intentamos, con el que trabajamos, es el vaso típico de Rioja Alavesa, reorientado en una única orientación y soportado con las alambres.
So our traditional pruning system, it's the traditional pruning system here in the region is the gobelet. So you know that gobelet normally have 3 arms. We are today here in front of one of them that it only has 2, but we will pass to the next one, and that you will see that some of them has 3 arms. And so that's the traditional one. This is the traditional pruning, the gobelet. We are trying to change a little bit that traditional system, because we trail our vines. So in order to have 120 degrees of 3 arms in 120 degrees the dimension, we are trying to get 3 arms in one lane that later will be trailed, as you see here on the. I'm going to put it a little bit. You see that we have some trailing on the vines.
Yep.
And some wires, and so that's why we are trying to put all of them in one only line in order to have a better exposition of the grapes. And yeah.
Okay. Y el tercer fundamento sería posicionar a nivel espacial la cosecha, el fruto, los racimos, dejando ciertos pulgares que posicionalmente dispongan todo el espacio de la línea.
And the third fundamental is to spread the vegetation throughout the line. We cannot prune all the shoots all together, because at the end the concept of trailing the vines is to maintain a bit a vegetation surface on the line, like as, ¿cómo dicen? Like lo más cubierta posible. Like,
As covered
as covered as possible on the line, and we need to spread the cuttings throughout the vine in order to later, when the shoots comes again, we have a good exposition of the vegetation.
Okay.
One of the fundamental that we haven't talked, it's pruning. It's important on the vines to maintain the vines alive. If we don't prune the vines, I mean, you see how long the shootings are in these vines. All the fertility will go at the end of the shootings, and the vines will die much earlier. So by cutting and pruning, we allow the vines to live longer, probably 80, 90, 100 years old.
For this particular one that you're pruning, how old is this? How old is this vine?
So these vineyards were planted. It was planted in 1960. So this is around 80 years old vines.
Wow.
And so that's why you will see that as we go through, and we are going to prune like a little bit faster, 3 or 4 vines for you to you will see how some of them are older, some of them are suffering, are weaker. There are other vines that they are a little bit more structured, with a more powerful, and that's because as human beings we are different one from the other. But yeah, these vines are an average of 70, 80 years old.
Right.
Sorry. Hello, Alice.
Hey.
I would like to say hello.
Hi. Good to see you. Yes.
Thank you for your support. But in this moment is a difficult situation. But thank you very much, and we would like to show you a little bit about our work. I would like Ruben, Carlos. Maybe it's a good idea to show them, like we work the fast fashion. We work in the vineyard, because now we explain you this and this and this, but the normal current situation is better to show idea, to make an idea about we work in the vineyard, you know.
So you mean doing a few
It's
at a normal
one or
speed?
two exactly. We are two.
The idea
machines.
was to show one like slowly, and once everything is explained, then we do one. We'll
Exactly.
video Ruben doing 1 or 2 so that they can actually understand how.
Exactly.
how
But
it is.
another side is it difficult to show, to know what's happening in the reality. You know, is that the reality way? This is the best way to understand better our work. Anyway, later we are together again in the cellar and the testing, and then now see you soon. See you half an hour.
Yes, I'll see you in half an hour. Thanks for
Okay.
Thanks for popping in.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you so much again.
Yes.
Okay, so we are going to have now Ruben like pruning 3 or 4 vines, or 2 or 3 vines a little bit faster for you to see how the result of the pruning. Bueno, ahora
No, sí, el corte.
Sí.
Los cortes.
One last thing that he wants to explain us.
Intentamos hacerlo con una inclinación y hacia el lado opuesto de la yema más superior.
So the cuts, we always try to do it diagonally from the last bud that is visible. So in this case, this is the last bud, and it has to go like diagonally like this.
Porque en primavera hay exudaciones, sale por aquí líquido con sales procedentes de la raíz, para que no dificulte la brotación de esa yema.
It's because during the springtime, there'll be liquids with salts and minerals that will be leaking from this part of the shoot, and so we don't want this liquid interfering with the buds.
Ah.
So that's why.
So it's like the vines are crying. That's how we define it. And this is like, and that will, those salts and that water will prevent the vats to develop. And that's why we need to be careful when how we cut it.
Right.
There is so much information, but you will see now that when Ruben starts pruning, it goes quite fast.
At one point, it becomes very.
No, but it's very interesting. It's very interesting and exciting for me because I think for most of us, when we visit the vineyards where it's not so cold, where it's warmer. So the activities you see is very different. So, but yet this is the stage that is very important because it is the first stage of winemaking. The correct pruning, you get the number of shoots, you get the buds, the buddings, and that's where you get a good crop.
Yeah,
exactly. It's the beginning, and it's really what shapes and starts the process. So if this is not done correctly, then it affects all the other processes coming along.
Yeah, probably it's one of the most important work that we do on the vines. So now he's going to start pruning.
So that's 4 cuttings, right?
Yes. So you see, we left one cutting in here, and we left another cutting here. So this is like dead parts. These are like last year's cuttings, and these are the 2 cuttings that will produce 4 shoots next year, and from there we average maybe 5-6 grapes.
Right.
So this is how the pruning finishes. So we leave 2 cuttings in here. 2 cuttings in here and 2 other cuttings in here.
Okay.
Let's do another one. Yeah. See, here behind we have already one with 3 arms, and it's going to cut it. And we left another 4 cuttings, 2 in here, 1 in this arm, and another one in that arm. So and each of the cuttings has
2 buds.
2 buds. So for 4 cuttings, 2 each buds of them. So we average 8 shoots. And from there, we could have a potential of 16 grapes. As I said, we normally average 1.5. That will lead us 12 grapes. And so that's what we are looking for, like for a potential of 12 grapes. And so at the end, and then during the season, we end up having between 9 to 8 grapes at the end.
En esta ya están los sistemas de formación hecho. Únicamente espacio y producción.
So Ruben was saying, like in here we have already the vine already formed because as we said, it has 80 years old. So in here what we are trying is to spreading the vegetation and controlling the production. And the last one, we are going to prune a younger vine. So this what happened in this place in the next vine is like for many different reasons the vine died because it was old. Or maybe the tractor did, we have an accident and the tractor took it out. So we did a new plantation. We plant a new vine. This vine might have 7 years old. So we are still like forming the vine, and he's going to prune it now.
Dejaríamos la formación del brazo, 1 y 2, para dirigirlo.
So in here, what we did is also not only controlling the production, but also like forming the arms. So in here, we will get 1 arm going this way. And in here, we are already creating that arm. And we leave 2 shootings. So we will have 4, so we leave 2 cuttings. We will have 4 shoots. Probably this will follow this one. Will be one that to prune next year because it's in the same plane. This one, it's coming out, and this is a more important cutting. This is the more important.
Right, if you want to kill that cutting, you cut it before the shoot. Yeah, the buds.
Yes,
Exactly.
So
Okay.
let's do. Let me
Maybe you can
let
see
me-
it here.
in here. Yes. So we wanted to. No, ¿qué quiero explicar? We had it in here. So this was how it was, and if we cut it in here before these productive buds, this I mean for sure we won't have a shoot or production, and then we leave the last year's shoot a little. We leave a small part of the shoot where we have the buds in order for that vine to keep growing.
Okay, got it.
So
So if we cut it in here, as you said, like we I mean we don't kill it. It's just we prevent those shootings from developing, and we leave these two that will develop, and we will have grapes from there.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah.
Esta
And
cepa que es muy vieja,
Yeah.
y necesita unos soportes, unos apoyos, le dejamos menos producción. Solo vamos a dejar un pulgar en cada lado.
so for you, this vine, as you see, is super old, and it has grown a little bit more faster than the or it has grown bigger than the others, but at the same time, because it has grown that much, you see that we have put some supports. So otherwise it will break down, and because of that, we are going to reduce the production of these grapes, of these vines.
only leaving
We will only leave three buddings, three
cuttings.
cuttings. Two and three. So that's how the pruning works. I mean, we are going quite slowly for you to understand a little bit. One person normally prunes 800 between 600 and 800 vines per day.
Oh, okay.
So this process is a little bit faster, yeah. Otherwise, we will not be able to finish in 2 months. And the last one. So this is also a young vine.
Yeah, this looks like a young vine.
And so we have formed. Let me put it in this way. So you see how it was, and now we have formed the 3 arms, 1, 2, 3 arms, and it's not only because we are going to get students, but also we need to form the arms. And in here you see easily like 1, 2, and 3 arms.
Right.
Usando aquella, como aquella.
And yeah,
O sea, muy vieja.
our idea is to create something like that with this vine.
3 arms.
Yeah.
So now that we are still in the vineyards, do you want to tell us a little bit about the soil, the gravel?
Yeah. So here we
Switch around so we can actually see.
so in here we are under a plateau. You see, like I don't know if you can see here. Yeah, there it goes. You see, it's quite flat in here because we are under a plateau. And actually, you see the door behind. I don't know if you explained where it was placed. Historic village. Yeah, it was the entrance of the village, and this village was built up on a plateau. So in here we have quite a shallow soil, probably 40 to 60 centimeters of depth. We have a clay limestone soils, and underneath we have a sand and
Mother rock.
the mother rock is a sandy mother rock, compact sandy mother rock, which, as I said, it's 40 to 60 centimeters from the soil, and so it's quite shallow, and therefore in here the vines that you have seen, the vines are old, but they are not super big because the root needs to fight a little bit to get inside the stone, the mother rock, and to be able for those roots to get deeper. And yeah, so that's a little bit this type of soil, like really shallow soils, clay limestone on the top, that sandy rock, compact sandy rock that we have underneath, and that creates actually a really good quality soil.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay.
Any other questions?
Any other question before we leave you with the video and we will run to the cellar?
No, I think we're good now. So I think the participants will absorb a little bit. So I'm sure they are thinking about what are the questions to put through. So I think Patricia prepared a video to show us on the way back to the vineyard.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, so exactly. So quickly we'll get back to the winery. In the meantime, we've prepared a little short video as we thought it would be interesting for you also to see a little bit of our winery, although it was difficult for us maybe to do it live, so we decided to do a little video. It's a homemade video. Hope you like it. It's quite easy to follow. We're showing 3 of our most important parts of the winery, which is our wine bar and our tasting room, where we'll be also doing the tasting today. Then we're showing you our barrel room, and then our fermentation room with our different tanks and so on.
Okay. Sure.
Okay.
I'll try to follow the video. Okay.
La Guardia is a small Roman village in the region of Álava in the Basque Country. We're situated in between La Sierra del Toloño and the Ebro River, which are responsible for a unique microclimate and terroir, ideal for vine growing. Welcome to Artadi. Our tour starts at the wine bar, which is a new building designed for visits. And on the left, up the stairs, we find a tasting room. Moving on to the next building, we have our second stop to the tour, which is the barrels room. Currently, we have the 2020 vintage wines sitting in French oak barrels. Here we have 2 porcelain fermentation eggs that we've been trying out for our white wines. And here is a library stock of all our single plot wines that we've been working on since the 2014 vintage. And on our last stop, the fermentation room. Here is where the reception, sorting, and fermentation of the grapes take place. We have different tank sizes in order to suit the capacity of each vineyard. Also, all our tanks are open, as it allows us to do a daily pissage during fermentation.
I think like what Patricia has mentioned before, right in the beginning of this Zoom session, 80 to 90% of the village men, their livelihood surrounds around winemaking. And so at that time in 1985, the Juan Carlos family founded Artadi. In 1992, the Lacalle and the Laudan family take control of the enterprise. They put together these 13 wine growers, and together, collectively come together, follow a certain set of rules, follow a certain set of philosophy and ideals, and discover characteristics of their village and their location, and how they can actually make wines that's remembrance of the place, and sell it to the village, sell it to the world. And that was how it happened. And after that, in 1996, Juan Carlos himself decided to build 2 other wineries in Navarro. One is called Atazu, and then next in 1999, El Sique in Alicante. And finally in 2015, another winery called Izaleku in Gipuzia. But anyway, that 3 other wineries is for us to create another Zoom session for you to discuss about that. Today, our focus is about Artadi wines. And again, many of us will remember Artadi by Vinal Pison, the flagship of the winery, and the wine that the grandfather has made. And today we did not showcase any El Pison. Instead, we are focusing on the next line, because the family wanted, this is a little bit of the marketing, which I think Patricia will share with us a bit later, the directions of the winery. So today, what we have as the flagship is the El Caratil, followed by La Posa, Quintanilla, the one that the one that we were at the winery just now, and Valdehines, and two of the daily drinking wine, which is the Vinage de Gain Tinto and Vinage de Gain Blanco. For Artadi Vinage de Gain, this was also the wine that we have tendered over to Singapore Airlines 3 years ago, and it's the first Spanish wines to be selected by Singapore Airlines to be served on their business class. And yeah, both ourselves and Artadi was very, very proud of it. And 2016 was the vintage. So is there any questions? Our attendees are very quiet today. Oh, yeah, Papul said, I'm so thirsty. I want to start drinking again already. Actually, same here with me. So I think while Patricia is actually moving to the tasting room, so to the Wine Clique team, the first one we're tasting today is the Vinage de Gain Blanco.
Yes, we are tasting it.
Yes. Patricia, we're very thirsty, so we're going to pour the Blanco into our glasses first.
Okay, we're here now, so we're ready to start. So go for it. Okay, perfect. Hello, everyone again. Sorry for taking a little bit longer. I hear you started with the Vinage de Gain Blanco. Let me also pour a little bit on my glass. I don't know, because I couldn't hear you while we were doing it. No, did you get to explain a little bit, Alice, or should we?
I explained a little bit of the wineries, how it started in 1985, and a little bit about the directions about Vignette Pisson, and then about what we are tasting today, and then the three other projects which we will look at having another Zoom session for you to talk about it. So we can talk about the Vinage de Gain now, and then along the way we go back to the history. We can talk back and forth a little bit about the history. Let's do that.
Exactly, perfect. So my dad started Artadi in 1985 with a very little amount of vineyard, where we normally would purchase the grapes. And with time, little by little, we've been able to completely reverse the situation. And right now we own approximately 75 hectares, and we only buy 2-3% of our production to wine growers that have been with us since the beginning. One of them basically being my uncle, and the other two are people from the village, a couple of Bardia, who work for a very long time. So there are three main concepts that we like to focus on in our Artadi. Although we normally say three concepts, but for me, it's very difficult to actually talk about three when for me it's majorly one, and the other two are parts of the one, which is terroir. And a little bit when I say terroir, it's where we are, who we are, our history, and the people that are behind the project. So we are located, Artadi is located in the village of La Guardia, and we're in between La Sierra del Toloño and El Río Ebro. And so La Sierra del Toloño is a little bit that protects us from the Atlantic climate coming from the north of Spain, which gives us this unique climate here.
Well, the main, and then one of in terms of the terroir, another important part is the grape varieties. We work with the traditional grape varieties here in the region, and as some of you are asking, yes, this is Bura or Macabeo. So the traditional two grape varieties in La Guardia and El Villar are Tempranillo and Bura. We call it Bura. Some other parts in France and the east of Spain, they call it Macabeo, but it's the same grape variety. And so that's the two main grape varieties that we have in the area. There is true that in some other areas here, there is some Graciano, Mazuelo, and other grape varieties. But to be honest, here in La Guardia and El Villar, the main two grape varieties, and we don't really find the other ones, are Tempranillo, and Viura. So that's also a very important part for us in terms of wine production and as a philosophy. Maybe we on the history. Yes.
This region is almost producing wine, and from what the information that we have, it's probably the fifth generation in the family that's been producing wine. So it really goes back into the family, and the know-how has been passed on from one member to the next. So there is a very strong culture in our region, which is also very important.
I always make the same joke. There's been the La Guardia and the surroundings, and if you go on Google Maps and you see like on Google Earth and you see our area, we are only surrounded by vineyards, and and I always do the same joke. Today we have cars to drive through and make long distances within a few minutes. Like 100 years ago, we only had the donkeys and horses, and the distance that we could cover in a day was much shorter. And at least that there is like 6 kilometers surrounding us that it's only planted by vineyards. So the only way of surviving here in the area has been vine growing. So, and that's for probably 90-95% of the people, not only us and our family, but people in the village and the surroundings have been dedicated to.
So those three ideas and concepts is really what we want to transmit to when we produce the wine. And so when we produce wine, we have two concepts in mind. We have the village wines and then the single plot wine. Viñas de Gain would be our village wine, where we really want to represent the villages where we have a vineyards, which are in La Guardia and El Villar, which is where we were today during the pruning. And the idea in this Viñas de Gain Blanco is most of our old vineyards over 50 years and more. There's always white vine inside the vineyard. So we select all of these.
You need to speak louder.
Yes.
Oh, sorry. I'll put also the computer a little bit closer. So what I was saying is that all our old vineyards that are over 50 years old have white vines planted within the vineyard with the red vines. So we have Viura plants with Tempranillo.
Historically, for you to know, this mix of Viura and Tempranillo was because historically we were producing carbonic maceration wine. That's for at least 10 centuries in La Guardia. La Guardia has been growing carbonic maceration wines, and that carbonic maceration process puts the acidity a little bit down and puts the pHs a little bit higher. And Viura is a great variety that has higher acidity and lower pHs. And in order to balance that loss of acidity because of that carbonic fermentation, full bunching fermentation, our ancestor decided to plant a little bit of Viura and ferment the Viura and the Tempranillo together. So we no longer do it in our winery because we distills the wine and we produce our Tempranillo with our 100% Tempranillo grapes. And because we have that Viura, we produce a white, and this is the Viura that this Viñas de Gain comes from those old vines of Viura. Yeah. Sorry,
yeah. 2016 is a very young vintage, has a lot of refreshing notes. For this varietal and for the fact that it's just village wines, how old do you think you will keep it for? The oldest expression that you have tasted, and what do you feel about it?
We don't have a huge history on white production, neither on red. Our history goes only back down to in the mid-90s. I mean, we started in the early 80s, in the mid 80s, but it's true that between the early 80s and the early mid 80s to the early 90s, we were mainly dedicated to produce young, fresh, really consuming wine. And it was also 90s where my father, he was willing to develop all these Viñas de Gain, all these Pavas Viejos at the beginning, El Pisón, and then the single vineyard. So we don't have that back history as historic wineries that they have probably wines from the early 20th centuries or from the 1920s, from the 30s. So we don't have that history. But our first production of white was in 1994. And still it's easy to drink, it's live, still has a lot of energy. And if we go back to other wineries that they have older vines, we can drink Buras from the 50s, from the 40s, from the 60s, and they are outstanding. So I think this Bura has a huge potential for aging.
That's great. That's great. Yeah. So let's move on to the Viñas de Gain Tinto, shall we?
So we're in the same concept for the Viñas de Gain Blanco here. It's also a village wine. We really want to represent the two villages of La Guardia and El Villar. Whereas in this case, we're on 100% Tempranillo. And here what we're really trying to search is really the fruit, the freshness, the youth. But although, like in the Blanco, it has a great aging potential. And sorry, my brother's saying that I'm talking too quiet. I need to speak louder. I was saying that also here in the Viñas de Gain, we have a great aging potential, and Tempranillo in general has this known for.
Right. If you talk about the name Viñas de Gain, does it mean anything?
Sorry?
The name Viñas de Gain.
Yes.
Does it mean anything?
Actually, vineyard. Viñas means like the vine, the vineyards, and Gain is a Basque name for altitude.
For?
Gain means altitude in Basque.
Yeah, Gain. So the second word of Viñas de Gain, the second part, it's a Basque word, which means altitude.
Ah, okay.
And so we refer to it because as we're very close to La Sierra del Toloño, we're quite a high altitude. And it's like saying the vineyards that are
on altitude.
Yeah, on elevation. Yeah. So for you to know, all our vineyards goes from 450 meters, which are the vines closer to the river, up to 700 meters to those for those vines that are really close to the mountain. So that valley, which is like quite high in altitude, that's why that's the name that refers on Viñas de Gain.
Okay.
I actually have a map that I could try and show you so that you can really see where the Sierra del Toloño is and the River Ebro, for you, so that it's easier to get an understanding of where we are actually located.
Yes, sure.
So I'm going to share my screen. 50 seconds.
Okay.
So you need to allow us to share the screen.
Okay. There's a question actually coming from one of the participants from Wyman. She asked, how are the experiments with using the porcelain amphora coming along? And what will be the future renditions of the white?
Oh, so just so the amphoras, the porcelain amphora, and we actually found this amphoras in Australia. There was a guy that he was producing a big volume porcelain amphoras in Australia. Well, big. It's 3-barrel capacity. And actually, we decided that we thought that it would be great for wine production instead of aging them, because we haven't talked about the Jura. We aged Jura for 2 years on the lease, on the stainless steel tank. And we thought that it would be a great idea to age those white Juras in those amphoras. And we bought these two to do a trial. Actually, they are great, to be honest. They are, they work really well. They create a lot of complexity, depthness. We don't like to do batonnage, but it keeps the wine a little bit more turbio. It keeps the vines, like the leaves on suspension, a little bit longer, because being an egg, and therefore it works really well for white. The problem is that after trying those amphoras, and when we decide to buy when we decide to buy more, the guy had already stopped his business. So we were not able.
Okay, so you only have two now.
So we only have two. But anyway, the wines developed really well in those ceramic amphoras.
We need to look it up. He retired, but he was trying to sell out the business. So hopefully, we need to do a lot of investigation, because I'm sure someone will take over the business. So fingers crossed, and hopefully we'll be able to buy some more. Because now we're actually perfectioning also the closure. So we think it really has. So if we can, we would actually like to work more with porcelain out there.
So I think now is for us to be able to visit you and then ask if we could do a side-by-side tasting of the wine, the one with in an amphora and the one that's tasted from the barrels.
Yeah, for sure.
2021 vintage, we'll be able to make a comparison between.
Well, 2020 already.
Yeah, but we only have two.
Yeah.
To be able to really see how it affects, but definitely it's something that will happen. We'll be working on. We'll be able to tell you more next time.
It's easy to explain why it works. It's because the leaves in suspension create more complexity and more deepness, and maintains more like fresher aromas, because the oxidation of the wine is slower, it goes slowlier, and that form of the egg that makes the vines to be a little bit more moving, and helps the leaves to be more on suspension. That creates that better. It creates a better wine because of that reason.
Right. Yeah. Patricia, do you want to show us the map before I move on to the next wine?
Sure.
Yeah, because for me, I find that the Tinto is really well balanced, a lot of freshness and complexity between the balance of the fruits as well as the acids.
I said that I'm not allowed to share my screen, but I should. I said that.
I'll make you as a host. Patricia, I'll make you as a host so you can share the screen.
Okay.
Thank you.
Make host.
Yeah. Okay. Can you see my screen now?
Yes.
Okay.
So go to the. So in this picture, you see the Sierra de Toloño mountain. This is La Guardia village. So from that mountain, there is like 5 kilometer valley down to the river Ebro. And we are going to show you the map. So you have the river Ebro down here. So yeah, you see the river Ebro on there, and that whole valley that goes up to the mountains. This is the whole. And that's the village of La Guardia.
This is the village of La Guardia. This is the village of El Villar. And for example, here you see that little blue dot there. That's where we were today. So that is Quintanilla. And we are, Artadi, the winery, is more or less around here.
Right.
So between these two is where our region, let me make it maybe bigger so you can see it better. Between here, between La Sierra and the River Ebro is where our region
a little bit more.
located.
So this is the Sierra Cantabria, the Sierra Toloño. This is the mountain. The vine culture, it doesn't start. I mean, we all our 700-meter altitude starts more or less in here. We do not cannot plant vines higher than that altitude, so maybe around this altitude, and then the valley goes down to the River Ebro down here. So this is the River Ebro, and then these are La Guardia and El Villar appellation, and then area. I don't know how, one country. I don't know how.
And all these little blue dots is where we have some of our vineyards. Most of them are single plot wines. That we'll be tasting today, so we can maybe come back later to this map and we can actually show you where they actually are located.
No problems. Okay, so now let's move on to the next one. Shall we do the Quintanilla first or the Valdejines first?
I think first Valdejines.
Okay. So the next one, Valdejines. What I remember about the Valdejines always is it's facing the morning sun. So very elegant, very warm kind of maturing of the berries.
This is our first single plot. It's a vineyard that is around 30, 35 years old. And we, I don't know if, can you see me? Because on my screen it's gone a bit gray.
Yes,
Can you?
Yep, okay. So it's a 35-year-old vineyard. And like Alice said, a little bit of the clarity of this vineyard is that it's facing, so we have a completely morning sun exposition. So in our region, it's very important this position of the vineyard. It has a big effect on the wine. And in this case, Viñas Valdejines is located in a little valley. So there's a little small, we can't even call it a river, it's literally a stream that only contains water mostly during the winter. And it's a little bit what separates it. So Valdejines is completely facing the morning, gives us more of a fresh wine, fruit, elegant. When we describe it to our other wines, we sometimes describe it a little bit more as an Atlantic wine, even though it's not an Atlantic wine, but it has more of those
Notes. Yeah, to me, I felt that there's a little bit of menthol notes, a little bit of the coolness. Yes.
So this vineyard is located in the border. It's located in La Guardia. So you saw on the map that La Guardia, it's on the left-hand side, and El Villar is on the right-hand side of the map. So La Guardia is on the west and side of that map. So Valdejines is right on the border of between La Guardia and El Villar. And that small stream of water and creek of water is what divides the La Guardia appellation or La Guardia area from El Villar. And Valdejines it is placed in that valley that goes down to the end of the La Guardia area. And we have,
no, I was just going to say, can I suggest that we taste the Valdejines and the La Poza side by side? Because I think there are two different expositions.
Yeah, we can do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, let me get it. Let me open, we are opening the words. But the only thing is like,
La Poza is 2014, so we're tasting different vintages. But definitely it's a nice comparison because La Poza is right in front of Valdejines. And like Carlos was explaining, so it's on the other side of the valley. And in this case, we are now in El Villar, what we could call it the area of El Villar or El Villar Appalachian Village. So the vineyards are also a little bit older, and we have a bit more of a deep soil. But like we said before, exposition is very important. And in this case, where Valdejines had the morning sun, in this case, La Poza is facing west, so it has completely all the afternoon sun, which is a much stronger and powerful sun, giving us a very mature, deep, profound wine.
It builds the tannins in a different way, where our Valdejines tannins are always more friendly, more approachable, and more younger style of more like dancing tannins. La Pota always builds up more settled down, more rounded, more powerful tannins. And that's the effect of the sun being, the vines being facing east or west. It's easy, like, you know, I mean, when we go to the beach, the morning sun, it's much weaker than the afternoon sun, and that effect has a huge effect. That statement that it has a big effect on the vines itself, and for sure at the end on the wine.
Because it's important also to state that in terms of process, we maintain exactly the same
growing, yeah,
the growing,
I mean,
and even also the winery, we follow exactly the same process for Valdejines and La Poza, or even all our single plots, because what we really want to show is the personality of the vineyard. So we always take very similar process throughout all our single plots.
Yeah, so yeah, I mean, what Patricia is trying to say, like, we don't have different recipes on the vineyards or on the cellar for each of the single vineyards. It's we try to our recipes to be respectful with the vines, respectful with the vineyards, respectful with the grapes, and try to let those grapes to express themselves and to maintain their own personality. And so we don't do different processes. Our only process is to be respectful with those grapes, and in order for them later, those grapes assess themselves when they become wine. And they became a wine, yes, for sure. So in here we are, I mean, it's a little bit more difficult to see the differences because there are two vintage difference, but we see how Valdejines is more crunchy, more younger style, more fresher, more on the red fruit aroma, and then La Poza is more settled down, more like more. I wouldn't say like mature, but more ripened style of tannins. The wine is more, it's longer, it's more built up. It's two completely different winery vineyards. And the funny thing is, like, we haven't explained it to you, there is probably 50 meters one from the other. So maybe we can show on Google Maps. Do you have Google? I love Google Maps for all this. Yes.
Can share, right? You get some.
We are opening Google Maps.
I think to me on the mouthfeel, I feel that the La Poza is very masculine, very structured.
Yeah. Yes, it's much more masculine. It's more structured, and so this is Google Maps. You see in here La Guardia, and let me turn into the satellite version. how can I wanted to say. Anyways, so this is La Guardia. You see that we are between La Guardia and El Villar. These are the two where we are. And we go to this small valley. So you see Arroyo San Ginés in here. This is the...
Arroyo means stream, river, how do you say it?
Creek.
Creek.
So Valdejines is this vineyard, all this vineyard. And as you well, we cannot see it really, but that vineyard is facing east. And on the other side of the stream of water of the creek, we have this vineyard, and this is La Poza. From here to here, I mean, from in here, there's like even like less than 50 meters, but we can an average 15 meters of distance, and but with two different exposures, and that creates two completely different wines. One Valdejines and the other La Poza.
Especially because in this case we're so close. It's true that in some other single plots we do have a small difference in the type of soil, but when talking about Valdejines and La Poza, the soil is very, 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 very similar. So really what makes the difference between one another is the exposition.
Okay, well, besides the style of the wine, we have another question. Okay, the name of La Poza. Is La Poza a homage to the golfer Ballesteros?
No, I'm going to share the screen again with you guys. So in here, in this, right in here, this area, there is a water pound. A pound of water where it's called La Poza Ballesteros. Pound and Poza, it's pound. La Poza is the translation of pound in English. Pound. And yeah, and then I don't know why they call it Ballesteros. Ballesteros is a really common name here in Spain. It's a family name, and yeah, and that's the name of that pond of water.
Okay, since we're at it, does Valdejines refer to location as well?
Yes, but if you see Valdejines, Ginés is the creek or the water stream name, and Valde means the valley of the San Ginés creek.
Right. Okay.
Because we are on the valley. This is like the valley of that small creek, river. However we want to call it.
Okay. Okay, so we've got two more wines. So let's catch up a little bit. So is it okay to taste the Quintanilla and El Caratel together, or better to be set away?
We can do both side by side.
Okay, let's do that then. So I'm more familiar with El Caratel. El Caratel were created together with Valdejines, with La Poza, because back to the map, it is like located more as an amphitheater. It enjoys both the morning sun, not directly the morning and the afternoon sun, but a very gradual temperature that's been contained in the valley.
Exactly. Let me share so I can show you where El Caratel is. So Quintanilla is here, so we don't have an exact. Let me go like this. We don't have a clear exposition on Quintanilla because it's quite flat. And very we're talking about El Caratel. El Caratel is right. Let me see here. Here. So the big one is El Caratel. And here we have a southeast exposure. So like Alice was saying, it's more of an amphitheater. So you have several types of expositions happening at the same, happening in the same
vineyard. So
Basically,
it's mainly facing south, but being an amphitheater, and amphitheater turns a little bit east, and therefore that's why it faces a little bit southeast. But the most important part, you know, is like south exposure are probably the most. They are probably the most ripened vineyards because of their location when they are facing out the sun always try to, I mean, they have more exposure. South exposures are always those vineyards with more exposure in this area. So as we are tasting a little bit both of them, let me go back. As we are tasting two vineyards, to be honest, I have never done this tasting side by side, or well, I have tasted side by side, but never like on a tasting like what we are doing today. But it's funny because thinking how these two can be related one to the other, these two vineyards. Probably we are talking two of the wines that the limestone are more present in the wine because of two different reasons. But one because of that shallow soil that we had in Quintanilla, with that mother rock being really close to us and having it's a sandy limestone rock. So that limestone, it really appears on the wine in the sense of the really the structure of that tunnel. We see all those granulometry that sandy, that chalky character of the wine that we've seen on the tunnels of Quintanilla. And I think it's quite present when you tasted it. The tannins are really, I don't know how to say it, that they are really present on the mouth. And that texture of chalkiness, we see it quite easily on Quintanilla. And then El Cabretil, it's a little bit the same, but not because of the soil being really shallow and having the mother rock. It's because the clay limestone that we have in El Cabretil, that soil has a lot of chalkiness. We go up to 17% of the chalk on the soil, and that also creates a really unique character of El Cabretil, and it creates a super complex wine with a lot of acidity, with that chalkiness also reflecting on the wine. And it's funny to have these two samples side by side to taste those two vineyards together.
it is. When you are explaining the two wines and when you are talking about the soil structure, that chalkiness, you know, inevitably your mind will try to find a relationship to it. So what I find is both of them give you that layers of calcium, that chalkiness, that calcium feeling. Whereas two things, one is the vintage is different. One is 2016, the other one is 2015. El Cabretil definitely had a lot more layers, a lot more structure, a lot more depth, and it almost has a little bit of crunchiness in it. Whereas the Quintanilla, side by side in comparison, the chalkiness is more evident, whereas the layers a little bit more subdued at this moment. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's why I was saying, like in Quintanilla, it's quite evident that chalkiness, that texture on the mouth of the calcareous, of the calcium. In El Cabretil, it's a little bit more elegant. That texture is more integrated, but at the same time, we feel that a chalkiness, we feel that a calcium, we feel that freshness that calcium provides us. We see that acidity that a calcium provides to the wine, and we see a relationship. I think these are the two best examples of all the vineyards that we have to feel the calcium. And I think, like for sure, as you said, like Quintanilla, it's much more evident, but I think both have that relationship on the calcium side of the process.
Do you mention before that the Quintanilla used to be in Vinas de Gayan? Or is it used to be in Pajo Viejos?
Well, it used to be in Palos Viejos. Then we used to put it in Viñas de Gain. When Palos Viejos, when we decided to put it in, when we decided to take out Palos Viejos out of our selection, and then when, I mean, it was always for 3-4 years. It has always been the best, one of the best parcels that it used to go into the blend of Viñas de Gain. And in 2016, we decided that it was time to give the protagonism, or put in value what that vineyard is, and put it again as a single vineyard. When we started producing single vineyards, all those single vineyards came from Palos Viejos, but not all the single vineyards that they used to go into the blend, we put them by separate. Because we used to put about 6, 7, sometimes even up to 10 different vineyards into Palos Viejos. And to start on the market with 10 different single vineyards, we thought it would be like really difficult. And that's why there's still like some of them that they go into the vineyards again.
Right, right. Yeah.
So and to be honest, we could probably take on the market 20 to 30 different single vineyards if we wanted. If we divide Viñas de Gain into all those single vineyards, it will be easier to end up with 20, 30 single vineyards. But I think like in the market and marketing wise, I mean, to sell that, it will be really difficult. Although we love Burgundy, and we think with a huge diversity of soils here in the area, Burgundy has been doing this for centuries, around over 1,000 years, and we need to start little by little. We need to identify and to see the personality, to discover the personality of each of the single vineyards, and probably, I don't know, but maybe little by little we will be releasing other single vineyards.
I think that's interesting because it's like, commercially, I think it's going to be difficult to educate and to be difficult to actually let people know the difference between the single vineyards. But I think educational could be something that when we welcome your winery, little by little explain the typicity of each vineyard, explain the typicity of the level of the soil structure, the exposition, and what all these really plays a part in producing the final wine.
Yeah, and then again, like Burgundy has been doing this for 1,000 years, and we've been doing this for 10 years. So 11. I know that a community today, the technology, internet allow us to be faster than what they used to be before, but still, like, we need to be patient. We need to let the market to understand the different single vineyards that we have, and maybe probably within 20, 30 more years, we will be able to have other vineyards and develop all different single vineyards when the market is mature enough to that we already understand Carretil, Valdeginés, La Rota, Quintanilla, San Lázaro, and maybe little by little we can include other single vineyards.
Yeah, and I think it's nice to be able to work with a family-owned vineyard. So from your granddad days, what I remember from the readings and from the literature that I can find from the web, it's about Vineyard Pison. And then from your dad days, yeah, he introduced single vineyards. So now the third generation, what do you think they have for us?
More single vineyards. And definitely, I think new techniques. We have there's definitely a climate change factor that's also influencing. So we'll have to be able to adapt to that. New tendencies, new things such as, and for us, for now, for the whites, but there's definitely a lot of new techniques that are coming up, and that we have to stay tuned to and have an open mind towards all of these new changes that are coming.
And then probably maintaining what our history. Sometimes in the wine business, maintaining history, it's an innovation. And sometimes in other businesses, maybe we need to innovate, we need to have better phones, we need to have better watches, we need to have better computers so we can communicate. But in the wine business, maintaining our heritage, that's the big part of our business. And maintaining the heritage of what my great-grandfather was, or our great-grandfather did, what my father has been doing for the last 30, 40 years, and trying to give out and then after our entire life, when our children will be here and will be taking over, trying to give them away something that it was at least as well preserved as it has been in the last few years, in the last decade. I think that's a very important part of our business.
So being able to give the fourth generation as much as we've received in terms of history, nature, for them to be able to find what we found, especially in the vineyards.
So just for example, like giving out soils that they are alive. The soil that we source everything that we are drinking out of the soils, and maintaining a healthy soil, maintaining a soil which has life inside of it, and letting the soil spread, and do not like kill the soil. It's our life. And so that's why we are trying, that we are organic farming. We are not only maintaining not only not treating with pesticides, but we are today we are like growing bees. We are having animals that they complete the cycle in the soils. We are like respecting and planting trees to do not only one farming, but having a multi-farming structure, and the bees and the animals can live the entire cycle of the year. There's all those things that we need to maintain, to that normal life will. The most important thing for us, and I think I was thinking a way to explain to you, is a forest is the most complex and perfect system for vine growing, or for the soils to be alive. And the forest, we don't do anything on the forest, but there is already like a cycle built up naturally that makes the forest to be alive and has a lot of diversity. And that's what we need to find on our vineyards. We need to we need to have some intervention of the vines, because we need to harvest the grapes, but try to replicate what the forest does as a natural cycle. Try to replicate that on our vineyards. It's what we need to do in order to later produce these wines with its own personality. And I don't know if I explained myself well what I wanted to say.
No, I think it's very nice to hear that, because I think it all started from how the history of Artadi began. That it was there because 80 to 90% of the villagers depended on this as a livelihood. And like what you mentioned, you were traveling with donkeys. Now you're traveling in cars. But the truth is, the amount of vineyards that's surrounding you is immense. And that's a livelihood. And in order to continue this, it's not just a matter of heritage, it's a matter of sustainability. And when you talk about sustainability, you talk about being able to respect nature. You talk about being able to understand what it takes to protect, what it takes to maintain, what it takes to continue. And I think that is very evident in wines.
And one thing that you haven't mentioned, and I think it's really important, how we interact in all that cycle. because we are not something out of nature. We are a part of the nature. We are humans. We are animals. But we cannot like become the main part of that thing and forget about the whole cycle, because we are a part of the cycle. So how we are able to be part of that cycle without destroying it, and that's the most important part. And that's what we need to learn. That's the heritage we need to pass to our children.
And we're very, very happy to hear that, because I think I take that as that is the philosophy of Artadi. That has started with your grandmother, your father, and now the third generation. So I think we all cheers to that. We all cheers to the belief, the philosophy. And with this, I'd like to say a thank you to the audience, to the customers, the participants who has joined us for the last 1.5 hours, and understanding what is the vineyard, what is the wines, and what is the philosophy of Artadi. And thank you very much, Carlos and Patricia. Extend my thanks to your dad as well for joining us briefly on this short session. So, well, all the way in Singapore. Yes, thank you.
Well, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure. It's been a pleasure to just spend this 1.5 hours with you guys and do the tour around the vineyards and here in the cellar. And yeah, I haven't been for a while in Singapore, so I hope to visit you guys soon.
Yes, definitely. Welcome. Yes, we welcome you. So goodbye.
Goodbye.